So, YouTube, I had one subscriber, and then I was excited. I got my first subscriber, and then I checked back like the next day, and already back to zero. Wonder if it was a bot account, or if it was somebody who just randomly stumbled upon the video, one of them, and then said, fuck it, I'm out. Clogging up there. It's harder to get subs nowadays, not just because of algorithms and the scope of YouTube, but also just because I think people want this like simplicity of when they log into places, they don't have like a bevy of all these like channels they sub to. I think people are doing the minimalistic route, less is more route type of thing. That seems to be a little bit more prevalent these days across everything, I've spent a lot of time recently actually like reorganizing like hard drives and deleting files, even things like digital clutter, There's that YouTube channel, like the Minimalists, and sometimes I watch their videos and I like their content, but then like I also like kind of see this like weird cultish vibe of it. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's a little weird. Like I respect people trying to trim the fat down, but I also think it's, at some point you're being a little bit odd. But anyway, so I'm a bit of a minimalist now. I still have an old retro video game collection of, about basically a 6 shelf bookcase that's like pretty filled with it, and then I also have some like Blu-rays and stuff too. Anyway, this video, I'm sitting here at the same gym I always sit at. This video is going to be about why I think Zoomers have a point and how the economy sucks and how nobody wants to fucking work anymore. One of the things that really irritates me is when people say, nobody wants to work hard anymore. Well, I don't agree with that. You see people slack off at the job, but the thing is, people have always, every job I've ever worked at, have always kind of had moments of slacking off on the job. Nobody is always in this like go-getter mood. Almost everybody is trying to do the minimal amount of work to get a reasonable raise each year, or advancement through a company, whether it's a more, traditional salary job of post-college life, or even when you're working your high school, college, hourly wage jobs and stuff like that. People want to have a modest raise, do the minimum amount of work. That's been the case since the dawn of time. The only difference now is I think there's more people who are, kind of realizing how, hard work doesn't pay off and it's not rewarded very much. More and more YouTubers that I watch will say things like, how people, sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a sec. More and more YouTubers are saying things like how, like, if you work hard to get ahead, you literally only move yourself up like a small rung of the ladder, that it's just not worth it. Nobody wants to, the whole premise nowadays is keeping everybody from falling behind and getting ahead just, we don't even do a really good job at keeping people from falling behind, but that seems to be the way that it's framed in the discussion. We need to make sure everyone is, nobody is, like No Child Left Behind was a good example of that, and that's before social media. That was like a little bit before. But yeah, I mean, the reframing is, I think, important to notice here. But I'm rambling a little bit. That wasn't as coherent as some of my other thoughts, I don't think. But the point is that, like, I would say I'm a middle millennial. You could say maybe I'm in the younger half, but the middle third, if that makes sense. And the early 90s births are a very pivot point. You could even say maybe maybe like 88 to 92. And I'm basically in that range. I'm on the end of it. I'm a 91 guy. But basically what you're seeing with that is the middle millennial, and that is the last era of people that I see. Some of them made it out of the dystopian situation that we're in. Some of them didn't make it out. And then anybody born past 91, man, it is very, very limited in who's getting out of that situation. And anybody who's, and of course, like the oldest millennials, the 82, 83s, 81s, 84s, they, for the most part, are doing fine. We might be reworking that to say almost like those guys have like a Gen X vibe to them. The more I talk to somebody born in like 83, the more I feel like they're like a 72 birth or a 68 birth or something, rather than like a 95, But I think that's mostly just due to the fact that, the first half of millennials, basically anybody who's a middle millennial basically were the ones who were graduating or in high school they were not experiencing social media quite yet, or it was just starting. You know, I always think, I truly believe around 2007 is when the modern social media landscape, and obviously things have changed so much since then, but that was the genesis of the modern social media landscape. And, you know, and then I would say there was another, like, kind of echo around 2016 or so, which, you know, because of that election cycle being such a fucking mess. But it was almost like the echo of the 2008 election, because the 2008 election was very meme-worthy too, you know, with Obama being this young rock star, and then in 2016 with Trump being this memeable, angry, you know, I guess the term is like angry white man, and there's some truth to that, but it's like, basically, I'm a firm believer now that if you want to be a better on on elections, just look at where the memes are on social media and what direction, and who's like uttered more on it, and that's the person you should just bet on. I'm a firm believer in that. Whoever's memed more, because like even in 2020, in the Biden-Trump, you did kind of see this like Biden memeing where it was just like these like the kind of like the jovial, you know, old man, you know, but he's like kind of stupid, but he's kind of dopey, but it was like kind of, Biden was kind of memed a little bit. I'm not going to sit here and say like it was like a good meme, but it's almost like all memes are good memes now. It's like all publicity is good publicity or something. Anyway, Zoomers have a point. I can see why they don't want to work. They're not being apprenticed. They're not being really ushered in. Like, basically, you would expect the millennials who are already in the workplace and kind of, you know, and a lot of millennials aren't really doing well in the workplace. So they don't know how to really, you know, be a mentor to a slightly younger or an older Zoomer or something like that. But basically what you're seeing is that the Zoomers don't have any sort of people to like really kind of admire, look up to, study, have a mentor, so to speak. And also they just don't see the value of working. I mean, when, you know, 3 bags of groceries costs you $100, I can see why you don't want to work for $12, $13 an hour. Basically, your groceries for, you know, a 2-week span would be, you know, I mean, you know, think about it. If you work 8 hours a day, an 8-hour shift, and you're getting paid 15 an hour, you know, 15, 30, 45, 60 times that, you know, 120 after taxes and everything. Basically, one whole day's work of your work is paying for your grocery bill. I mean, that's insane. So, you know, you work 5 days a week for 40 hours. You know, 1/10 of your paycheck is going to groceries. I can see why Zoomers are saying, fuck it, I'm just going to live at home. I mean, I know a lot of Zoomers that, you know, again, I'm approaching mid-30s. I still like to say early 30s because, you know, 91 is, you know, I mean, I'm 33, you know, and I'm a late 91, but it's like, you know, I'm approaching mid-30s, and that's, you know, the earliest part of middle age is, you know, 35 or so, 37. And basically what you're finding out is that, you know, that the Zoomers, you know, they don't even do things like get their driver's license. They don't know how to afford a car. They don't know really, I mean, cars take maintenance. I mean, you have to pay to get it repaired every so often. Things like oil changes, tire rotations, new tires if one gets flat. I mean, not just, the car alone is not just enough. I mean, there's a lot of payments to it. Gas for your car obviously is a big one. So the Zoomers are saying, I don't want to work. I don't blame them. They're just living at home. And that's basically an echo of the millennials. I just think Zoomers are doing it in a larger degree. So I don't know. I think Zoomers have a point, and sometimes I declare I mean, again, I talked about this in an earlier video where I was declared an honorary boomer by a coworker, and I was declared an honorary like Zoomer, so to speak, by these 17, 16-year-olds at the gym basketball court. They asked me to play, and they literally said in the exact same day, a boomer told me how I'm like one of the good millennials because I still come into the office. Ironically enough, that guy it works from home almost all the time now. But then, of course, and at the same day, I went to a gym to play some basketball, or I was going to just lift weights, but then they asked me to play basketball with them. And I basically, you know, I played a couple of games, and then I said, you know, I'm an old man. You know, I'm 30. I was like 30 at the time. You know, it was a few years ago. And they oh yeah, we always forget you're 30. And they were like 16, 17, maybe 18. And, you know, I'm just playing some basketball, having a good time. I still like to play. But yeah, I can see why they just want to play video games all day, you know? I hope they take care of their physical and mental health and not just, you know, completely veg out. But a gym membership, you know, $30, that's still affordable. And you want to know why gym memberships are still kind of affordable? I mean, there's some gyms that are like $120 a month or something ridiculous. And they do have a lot of fancy stuff associated with it. But it is like, man, $120, you better be getting like free protein shakes a few times a week or something. But yeah, I mean, I basically see a bunch of, you get a $30 gym membership and you live at home and maybe you have a car, I guess, or, you know, I hope you're not Ubering to work because that would be a waste of your money. I don't recommend Uber Eats. That is one thing I will say. Millennials, I don't think we're starting to embrace the Uber Eats culture too much and DoorDashes and shit. I think one of the simplest things people can do to save a little bit of money is not order food like that. The amount of just fees and extra shit that they tack on is a waste. I mean, think about it. Like, you know, if you're Uber Eatsing like Taco Bell or McDonald's, you're getting a lukewarm double cheeseburger for twice as much as you would pay for just, I mean, you know, not that McDonald's is, you know, there's not a lot of value menu on that menu. And there's not a lot of value on that menu anymore. They have like the 2 for $3. It used to be 2 for $3. Now it's 2 for $3.69, I think, where I'm at. And the only one that's really worth the fuck is the 2 double cheeseburgers because the fries, you get a small fry, and the chicken nuggets, I guess you could do that too. But those are the only 3 things. They used to have a $1 value menu. They don't have that shit anymore. Eating out is expensive. You can basically spend only like $10 more and go to like an Outback Steakhouse, maybe like $20 more, 15, than going to like getting a Big Mac value meal at McDonald's. Wendy's is, I think, the biggest culprit. A junior bacon cheeseburger is like $3.50. And I do think their JBCs maybe have improved a little bit quality-wise, but like $3.50? Damn. That's like, I remember when they were $1 or maybe like $1.50 or something. You could get 3 junior bacon cheeseburgers for the cost of like $1.25 now. Yeah, so I mean, everything's just very priced out of control, and you know, no wages have kept up with it. I'm in a relatively nice position financially where, now I will say my salary was a little bit nicer even just 5 years ago, but, you know, I have not gotten reasonable raises to keep up with inflation, but I've gotten close to it. Nah, not really close to it, but more than what most people are probably getting. And I will say, it's just, you know, even, I even think people who make $100,000 a year now where I live are not really doing that great. You're not quite paycheck to paycheck, but you're gonna start looking and penny pinching a little bit. I don't need that this time. And before, $100,000 a year was like the kind of the barometer, right? That was kind of the, you know, because you're going from 5 to 6 figures, and that needs to change. That was the barometer in 1997, and it's still the barometer in 2024. It should be $150,000. Probably should be viewed as the barometer now. And no, I don't, and not many people are making that. Maybe less, maybe about half of a percent of the country make 150 or more. Man, maybe it's a tad more. I think $100,000 a year was like 93rd percentile. There was a website called whatsmypercent.com or .gov or .org or some shit. I think it was .com. And you could type in your salary and they would give you like basic metrics of things like, you know, if you're in the northeast, southeast, southwest, northwest type thing. And I think they also had age and gender, and I think they might have had race there too. But yeah, I don't know if What's My Percent is even still around. But yeah, I mean, $150,000 a year should be viewed as like the gold standard of like upper middle class, or like, you know, and it's not. I mean, people still say $100,000, and $100,000 again was the gold standard in the 90s, and this is not the 90s anymore. I wish it kind of was, but it ain't. So, I mean, I think people need to talk about this more, and you're starting to see it. I mean, it's being talked about by YouTube vloggers like like me and my attempt, but like the only time you really ever see this talked about on TV, and granted, I don't watch a lot of cable news anymore. I think it's all poison. I don't think they're necessarily straight up lying to you, but I just think it's very generic and very boring and very milquetoast. I mean, I'd rather have a news, you know, if a CNN, MSNBC, Fox, like they had like an hour-long news show, and during that hour-long news show is basically just exposés on like 2 to 3 topics rather than like these like breakdowns of, you know, some speech by a politician. I'd rather see them do a breakdown, like a, you know, in an hour-long program, you know, after commercials, it's like 43, 44 minutes. They have like 3 15-minute segments about basically like, oh, here's a story in, you know, this day we're here in Chicago. Now we're in, you know, here's a town in Mississippi and here's their struggles. Here's a town in you know, West Philadelphia, born and raised. No, I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, that's what we need. We need like, you know, we need to have people doing these stories about actual local cities, bigger cities, smaller ones of, you know, 50,000 people or less. Stuff like that. We need to have stuff like that being talked about on the news and actual stories that have some substance. 15 minutes, you know, you can actually tell a little bit of a story. Not these 30-second blurbs followed by, you know, another a cut up segment of a speech by some, you know, senator, you know, state, a senator for like the federal government. I think we do need to focus more locally about the actual struggles of people all across the country. You could even do the world. But I think we need to focus mostly on the United States since we have more power to change things with, you know, voting. But yeah, I mean, I just think Zoomers have a point. I will say, you know, I always like looking at each generation and saying, yeah, that's something that generation did well. And the Boomers have things that they did well. I think they focused a little bit less politically. Obviously, they protested things like Vietnam, but I think most Boomers, you know, they kind of, once that kind of stuff ended, they went back to, like, actually doing stuff. You know, again, like I thought I brought up in another video, like, Woodstock was also it was primarily a music festival of, like, love and listening to music and fucking in a tent somewhere. And, you know, that type of stuff still happens, but, like, it doesn't seem like it's as part of, like, the cultural zeitgeist for any generation anymore. So, you know, that's something the Boomers did well. Gen X, I mean, I think the Gen Xers, I think your best, pretty much your best, like, video game designers all seem to be from Gen X. You know, somebody born in, like, the 60s. I guess some people will say, like, the Nintendo guy, Shigeru Miyamoto, whatever. I think he's a Boomer. I think he was born in, like, the early or mid-50s. But, like, some of the best, you know, video game designers, I think, were born in, like, the 60s. Maybe late 50s, which would be a Boomer still. But yeah, I think so. Every generation does something well. But, and one thing I think the Zoomers do well is they've observed how unfair the economy is and how getting ahead isn't really this thing that hard work does. You know, you have to work exponentially harder to get a slightly linear bump economically. So I hope that trend needs to change. You need to be able to work linearly to get ahead linearly. And, you know, if you want to just literally bury your head in the dirt and work your ass off and, you know, give exponential amount of hours. I mean, not exponential, but you know what I mean. Just give an insane amount of hours to your workplace. Well, then you should deserve an insane amount of increase, not a slight increase. That's absurd. So, I mean, again, I don't see much of a future economically. So I guess the question I'll propose at the end, if anybody watches these videos, I don't think they do. The thing I'll propose is, what is there on the horizon that actually gives optimism to economic growth? I mean, especially for a younger, like Zoomers, the youngest millennials, and I mean Gen Alpha, the oldest Gen Alphas are what, like born, like I guess the oldest Gen Alpha would be like 7 or 8, so like we can worry about them in 12 years or whatever. But yeah, I mean the oldest Zoomers, 26, maybe 24. Yeah, I'd say the oldest Zoomers are probably about 24, 23, 24. That's old enough that they should be starting to think career. I mean, I think that's very reasonable. And in theory, the Zoomer generation is going to skew older because as birth rates have gone down, there's more older Zoomers than there are younger Zoomers. The same thing goes for the millennials. There's more millennials born in the early and mid 80s than there are mid to late 90s millennials. So the older Zoomers are going to be the ones guiding the workforce for the Zoomer generation as a whole because there's more of them. So I just want to say, and you know, as a millennial, that's a little bit failure to launch, and I will, you know, align myself with the Zoomers here. What are your, what is the sort of, any sort of way out of this failure to launch this economy? Where is the optimism for anything? Every part of the economy I see seems to be more pessimistic and just going through the motions and, hoping that like they get out of the system alive. And that's not a healthy way to live. You want to make sure other people, and there's general growth and happiness and success for everybody. As long as you're, as long as you're willing to work hard. And you're not seeing that. There are very much people alive today of every generation that want to work hard and get ahead. And they are working hard, and they don't see themselves having really any shot to get ahead. So, if you have anything that you're optimistic about economically, in the economy, let me know. Just my thoughts, and I'm out.